Hi guys, and welcome to my review of the KZ ZVX. This is KZ's latest single DD in a long line of DDs that KZ has introduced over the last year and a half, and another one that showcases that KZ wants to give us properly tuned products, wants to give us products which are well designed. And that the reality is they have been able to do that ever since the days of the CCA CRA, which was probably the first, let's say, not better tuned, but the first, I'm going to say, properly tuned DD, although it still had a somewhat kind of a V-ish signature. It provided us with a very, very pleasant sound, and I'm a big fan still to this day of the CRA. Nice deep sub bass rumble. If any fault was to be given to it, was that the initial pin again was a little bit too relaxed, and that kind of made vocals a little bit recessed. But overall, it wasn't really an issue. And then it had a peak at around 5K, which could be a problem for some, but it was easily resolved with some tip rolling, and it wasn't something which was impossible to overcome. Anyway, the ZVX is using the latest of the in-house designed XUN driver, which they call it the legendary driver, which first saw light. I'm going to say this, I could be wrong, but I believe that the first time that driver really came or was introduced was actually in the CRA. And then it's had various upgrades, in the Lyra, in the CXS, in the DQS, in the ZAR, which also utilizes the same legendary driver, that same XUN driver. In my opinion, have those upgrades been significant? I'm not going to say significant, but I'm going to say enough to see small increments of performance out of that driver. The reality is, in this latest version of it, or in any other version really, the XUN driver is a fantastic driver. It is a very well put together driver, one that kind of begs the question, with that driver, and we've seen that technology used as well in the HM20, the CCA HM20, and now more recently in the KZ Linglong, the small little bullet one. It begs the question, that driver put together in a more, let's say, in a more well thought out manner of a hybrid. I'm not saying that the HM20 isn't a good hybrid, because I do like it, but put together in something a little bit more well thought out. I think that driver could show some real genuine impressive results. Anyway, again, I'm ranting and going off on things which don't really interest. What is the special thing about? Let's have a quick look at the ZVX. It's using an all-metal shell, which kind of follows that design. I've got the black ones and I've got a silver one as well. Kind of follows the philosophy that they used on the CXS, which is kind of this see-through hole and open back, vented back plate and so on, as you can see there. Okay. I didn't have any issues with the fit of the CXS, although some people did, but I will say that the ZVX does fit me just a little bit better, but like I said, not really anything major. Both of them fit me perfectly. I have absolutely nothing to say about it. So, nice build quality. It's not a build quality that you usually see associated with a $20 product. That's the reality. It's got a nice build quality, fits well. Points of perhaps not as good. I don't like the stock tips. The stock tips that come with the ZVX. Although for some it might be good, because the being foams, you just put them in your ears and you're going to get pretty good isolation straight away, and things are going to work. in terms of the performance, the difference you get in terms of performance of the ZVX or those foam tips, and then you put on these silicones, these BGVP wide bore silicones, is, in my opinion, big enough to justify using these silicone tips if your ears will allow. That's my opinion. And the other point, which obviously is a common thing, is the cable. With the original cable just isn't any good. I mean, this is a nice HDK cable that I'm using here. So yeah, that basically covers it. What about the sound? Well, the sound is not going to be a very difficult one to really explain, because the Lyra, the CXS, the DQS, the KZ DQS, and this, they all share common DNA, okay? And it's all just slight adjustments here and there. This one had perhaps a way too laid back bass as compared to the treble and to the, up to the upper mids and treble, and so it could get a little bit, I wouldn't say shouty, but just a little bit unpolished when the volume was turned up a little bit, and with certain musics, especially with female vocals, you could notice that. So the Lyra, the CXS, and obviously here I am a firm believer that the shell does have and does play an important role in that aspect. The shell contributed to changing the internal resonance of the whole thing, and the fact that it's also is an open back. Although the open back, I'm not gonna get into that one, because I have my own personal opinions when it comes to that issue of open back. Gave the CXS a fuller bass, a bass which was noticeably more rounded, and the treble and the upper mids to treble, that came down slightly, so it gave us an overall more coherent package, in my opinion. The DQS was a step backwards, in my opinion. They went for although they are all V signatures, they are all various grades of V signatures, more accentuated, less accentuated. The DQS is the more V of all of them, and this V brought with it, although fun and engaging and great for EDM and so on and so forth, it brought with it a lot of over thickness, a lot of how can I put this? You lost clarity in the mids. It just it's fun, but no way was the DQS as capable as the CXS or the Lyra when it came to technical aspects, or just how the mids and came across. All of them had acceptable timbre and tonality. I'm going to say acceptable because that one there I think was a little bit overemphasized, so it could the Lyra and the CXS for the most part were correct, and I liked the timbre and the tonality that they presented, and that's basically it. With the ZVX, what basically KZ has done is they've introduced what is known as a Zobel Network, and this is a Zobel Network. So your speaker or your driver has a DC resistance. The coil has a DC resistance, and it also has a part of it which is you can say that it's got an inductance because of the coil. So you could actually substitute this speaker here for an inductor and a resistor, and that would represent the speaker. And by adding a capacitor and a resistor, which usually is the same value as the DC resistance of the driver, what you basically are doing is linearizing the overall DC resistance and bringing down the impedance so that it's more linear, and why? Because having that inductance present from the coil on the driver, it has a tendency of raising impedance as frequencies rise, and this creates certain peaks in the frequency response. So as you can see here, so it raises the impedance. This raising of the impedance creates peaks, and it just spoils the sound to a certain extent if care isn't taken. And by using a Zobel network, what you do is you linearize that impedance curve, as you can see here, and you can in that way control better those peaks that you have in the frequency response, and do away with some of those peaks that actually can be problematic and bring some harshness or some lack of polish to the overall sound. So basically that's what they've done here. There's still a tuning filter on the front vent. There's still a tuning element in the actual nozzle, but the Zobel network is a smart way of let's say, improving the tuning. It was actually something that was first used more in radio frequency applications, and only later was it used in audio applications. It is sometimes used internally at the output of an amplifier, but most of the time it's actually used on the speaker side. And this basically then, like I said, just gives the amplifier an easier load, or a load that will be more constant. On the speaker side, as I just mentioned earlier, it makes that impedance, or that is shown be more linear, especially above a certain frequency, usually above 1K, makes it become more linear, and that then obviously helps out with the frequency response and doing away with resonances or peaks that can be harmful. All of this to say what then? That when you listen to the ZVX, you are listening to a more polished version of any one of these. I'm going to eliminate some of them because the difference is very significant. Compared to the DQS, it's very different. The DQS is all about being fun. It's full. It's rounded in its sound. I can understand what they were trying to do here, but I actually believe it was perhaps a step backwards, in my opinion. So it's not really fair to compare it with the ZVX, but because the ZVX, although it has its flaws, is capable of an audiophile reproduction, while that one, no, not really. It will just be the more traditional kind of KZ V signature in this. Okay. Compared now then with the Lyra and with the CXS, the CXS and the ZVX are very, very similar. And when I show you the graphs just now, you will understand what I'm saying. Very, very similar. And in essence, I could actually say that if this is a more polished version of this, this is a more polished version of that. So in essence, what the ZVX gave us, or is giving us with that addition of that Zobel network, is a polishing up of the frequencies above, let's say, 1.5K, removing some of that slight harshness, that slight lack of polish that you find here. And you know, people keep in mind when I'm saying lack of polish, and I'm being perhaps harsh in that choice of words. Of course, this is all dependent on how loud you listen to your music. Because if you never listen to your music loud, you'll never notice that harshness or anything. But if you're like me, that like cranking up a little bit, you do notice that at higher volumes, this sounds more composed. This sounds more in its element, and it doesn't sound so edgy. While this can start sounding edgy, and this one definitely does sound edgy from a certain point up in the volume. I mean, it is one of those things that is very noticeable between the three of them. In terms of its bass, it's a nice, full, controlled bass. It's got ample. I mean, for me, I really don't. I can't really put a finger and complain about anything because it's fast enough. It's got good mid bass, got good sub bass, it's got good texture. It's a very capable bass. That's not the problem. The mids, as I mentioned, yes, the mids, and I believe that by what ultimately KZ is trying to do is to approximate more and more to a harmon kind of a tune. And you will see something very curious when I show you the graphs in a second. And yes, you do see that this is approximating more that kind of harmon kind of a tune. So the mids, in my opinion, well executed. I prefer male vocals over female vocals only because there's a slight little lack of extension up top. At least to my ears, that's how I perceive it. There's the usual peak at 8K, which can be to a certain extent coupler related and can be as well driver related. There can be that energy there because that peak is more prominent here and here. So yes, that peak that's there is not only just coupler related, but it's also a peak that genuinely exists. When it comes to the technical side of things, soundstage, imaging, detail retrieval, layering, that kind of stuff. Soundstage, look, it's always such a complicated one. It's decent, although closed in. It's not an expensive soundstage. You don't really get any 3D out of this. You don't. But it's fine. It's like if you were in a small venue listening to music. So you can position, the imaging is pretty decent. You can position everybody nicely. There's good panning from left to right. You get some of that as well. Not very tall. The depth, again, acceptable. You can get a good perception of depth. Detail retrieval is where this perhaps suffers. And when I say suffers, is very relative as well. I mean, maybe you might get just a smidge more detailed retrieval here on this because of the way that the mids and the highs were tuned, but it's never and there's also perhaps just a little bit more past 10K on here than what there is here, but it's not a huge day and night difference. But yes, that's not one of its better points, let's put it that way. And timbre and tonality is, for me at least, is the best out of the bunch. It's got very nice timbre and tonality. Everything sounds very correct. The coloration that does exist is a very minor coloration that actually makes it engaging, actually makes it sound nice. And yeah, so compared to the KZs of the recent times, and there is two other KZs that I'm a big fan of, which are the EDA Balanced and the EDX Ultra. It's a hard one now to say. Okay, you have the CRA as a reference. The EDX Ultra and the EDA Balanced are improvements over that in that they polished up things slightly. But overall, the sound signature was kind of similar. The EDX Ultra did have a little bit more extension past 10K. These kind of traded blows. In my opinion, they weren't exactly significant upgrades over those ones previously mentioned. This one, although the improvement is minor compared to the CXS, but noticeable, it is a very big improvement over this. I'm not even going to compare it to that. And compared to the previously mentioned ones, the EDX Ultra, the EDA Balanced, and the CRA, the original one, it only just loses out to the EDX Ultra in terms of its extension past 10K. Otherwise it is an improvement over those. So overall, yes, this is the better or the best single DD that KZ has offered us to date. It is unquestionably, not only in the build. I mean, if you put things into perspective, the CRA was $11, $12 and was a plastic shell. This, when it first came out, was like $21 plastic shell. This was the first of the ones that had metal and offered at $20. This is $20. That's close to $20, and it's half metal, half plastic. So in terms of build quality, top marks. The driver used, we know, is top marks. So unquestionably, this is the best value for money as well up to now. I've got that CRA up there for a special reason, and this is just a very quick one. There was some talk about the CRA having changed the tuning and not being exactly the same as the original, and I'm going to confirm that, yes, that is true. That CRA that's over there, and I've got two of them, and both of them measure the same way, that CRA is basically a Lyra. So gone is that, and I'll show you in the graphs now, gone is that dip of the 2-3K and then rise. That's gone. It basically graphs the same as a Lyra. So the driver there, or the tuning that they've implemented in the new CRA, is now the same as the Lyra. I'm sorry if the powers that be don't like what I'm saying. I apologize, but that's the reality. As compared then to the ZVX, compared to some of the players in the sub $20 realm. KZ ZVX, the HPB collaboration, Comparing the two of them, in my opinion, and no disrespect intended to HPB, I know that this was tuned with a specific purpose in mind. This is a better IM. It's got a cleaner bass. The mids are cleaner. It's a better sounding IM overall. That's not to say that that was a bad sounding IM, by no means. If what you wanted was a bass head reproduction, that's the one to go for, unquestionably. It then leaves us with these two, the Tangzu 1 ear, which is a kind of a crowd favorite in the sub $20 market, and the Tooth Ears Ola, which is kind of gone a little bit under the radar. It also offers a nice metal shell. It offers an 11mm driver, actually a slightly bigger driver. And these two have got more of a harmonish kind of a tune. Although when I show you the graph now compared to the ZVX, you'll actually be quite surprised. As compared to the Tangzu. The Tangzu, yes, is more proficient in terms of its mids and highs. There's more detail here than there is in the ZVX, unquestionable. There's more sense of air, of 3D, better soundstage, better imaging. All that, the technical side of it is here superior. Is it superior by much? No. It will be very much what you like to listen to. So if you like to listen to jazz and that kind of stuff, yes, this will be better. If, however, you like listening to pop, EDM, rock, I would probably go for the ZVX, to be honest. I would probably choose this over that, over the 1 ear. Obviously, that's not to say that the 1 ear is not good. No, the 1 ear is good, and it's an amazing IM, but this is what it is. I'm just saying it by the way I heard it and my ears heard it. As compared to the Holla, somewhat similar to the 1 ear to a certain extent, but it's got a little bit more bass, and that allows it then to trade blows nicely here with the ZVX. The way that the mids have been tuned with a more gradual pinna gain, which peaks up at around 4K, that makes this sound very smooth. It's got a nice authority to it. No sibilance, no nothing of that sort there, but it just sounds a little bit, let's say, less fun, less engaging. It's very correct sounding, but compared to the ZVX, it will be a more laid back ZVX. So it's not really one is better, one is that. It's just that the way that this was tuned is to be a little bit more chilled. It's got very nice technicalities. Soundstage, imaging, and detail retrieval here again are slightly better than on the ZVX. And yeah, that's basically it, guys. I mean, the reality is this: KZ is moving in the right direction, and I get really excited when I see them doing that, because they have the know-how, they have the financial capability, and I just for the love of me can't understand why don't they just once and for all give us some really, really amazing products, because they can do it. They can do it. I sometimes almost get the feeling that they are, I don't want to use the word, but you guys know the word that I'm thinking of. And it's okay, very nice, but they give us this, then they improve that a little bit, they give us that, and then they give us just give us the cookie. Come on. You're showing us the cookie, just give it to us once and for all. That's it. So yeah, guys, that's it. I'll show you another graph so you guys can see better what I was talking about during this whole big talk of mine, and that's it, and I'll wrap it up afterwards. Hi guys, and welcome now to the graph section of this ZVX review, and I'm going to show you straight away the graph that I got of the ZVX, but with the stock foam tips. So where is it? Yeah, here we go. Okay. So this is the graph I got of the ZVX with the stock foam tips. It's fine. I mean, you look at it and it looks okay, fine. It's got a little peak there at 8K, nice bass, almost flat by 200 hertz, so very nicely done bass. Pin again is nice and smooth, and really nothing that you can falter at it. But my question to you is this: do you prefer that, or do you prefer this? Let me just align it there better. Honestly, I prefer the second graph, okay? Although I will do the comparisons with the first one. I feel that the wide bore, although graphically it doesn't seem like it actually added anything, it sounds more open than the stock foam tip. That's my very honest opinion, and I highly recommend you at least give it a try. Because if you look at this graph the way it is, it will be a graph that will very much be along the lines of, for example, there we go, Tangzu 1 year. Okay, see, Tangzu 1 year, KZ ZVX. Would you believe? Look at that. Look how similar. Obviously, although the graph shows that both of them have very similar bass, no, forget it. And again, although the graph here shows that, oh no, there's not much of info up top there on the 1 year, no, trust me, the 1 year has got more info up top there compared to the ZVX. Why? Firstly, because this here doesn't correspond to the reality as well. So the bass of the ZVX is way more prominent, and the bass of the 1 year more tamed. So the overall balance of this pens the sound, or gives it a sound which is more mid-centric and detailed up top, while the sound of the ZVX is a warmer mid-centric sound, if that is in any way making any sense. But anyway, not wanting to jump the gun here. Okay, there we go. Actually, you know what? I'm gonna leave this graph. Yeah, number 10. This is the Ola, the truth ears. Again, you see that in terms of the bass, although you would think that the ZVX has got more bass, no, the difference is not like you see here. It's very, very minimal, honestly. What you do notice is, yes, that the Ola has got more air, more 3D effectiveness. And then, yes, you do notice as well that this little difference here of the upper mids is noticeable. Not dramatically, but in vocals you can pick up on it. Especially if it's a female vocal, you will notice it a little bit more. So that's the Ola out of the way, the 1 year out of the way. Let's compare it now with the other KZs. First of all, the Lyra. Okay, Lyra. Apparently the same, as you would see. Actually, if just for the sake of you guys and seeing and not saying that I'm not wanting to show, okay, if I actually show it with, if I actually put the Lyra with the ZVX with the stock tips, as you can see, what has happened is these little smidges here have been more tamed down, but overall they graph very, very equal to each other. I mean, honestly, very equal. If you told me this was left and right channel, I would accept it as left and right channel, okay? But when you listen to it, you listen and you can feel that one is definitely way more polished, way more refined than the other, and that's the ZVX. I'll add here the CXS, the CCA, number 3. There we go. And again, just quickly, if you recall what I said earlier, on the CXS, what they did is they gave it a smidge more bass, and they polished up here this area which was somewhat making the sound of the Lyra a little bit clinical, a little bit cold, a little bit metallic, okay? And on, let me take the Lyra out, and with the ZVX, what they've basically done is, again, that they've cleaned it up slightly there, linearized the weights over there, but very similar. And this is proof once again that the driver that's being used is probably the same driver, with little or no difference between them, and it's just down to pure tuning and how that Zobel network has been able to help out with the overall impedance up top here. Okay, that's that they're out of the way. For the sake of as well comparison, I've got the DQS here somewhere. Here we go, number 6. So here's the DQS, and the DQS, yes, you can see, although in this area, yeah, it's not that bad, this increase of the bass here, this bloat, just made things more muddy. You know, that's especially when you're listening to them like back to back and next to each other, you notice it. It's not that the DQS sounds bad, but by comparison to the others, it just sounds overly thick. Okay, you know, excessively thick. I mean, and we're talking about that 72, 80, so 11 dBs. That's not too bad, but it just, okay. While the ZVX keeps it at 10 dB, so everything stays within roughly 10 dBs. So DQS, we can kill it. Oh yeah, let me just quickly show you the CRA 6. There we go. That's the CRA. Okay, and if you guys recall, the CRA was known for its bass, which is very well done, but then it had this dip here, which kind of, you know, made mid sound a little bit recessed, and had this peak here at 5, but it had decent extension, and it actually has got better extension than the ZVX. Okay, if you recall, now I was saying that they've launched the revised version of the CRA, and the revised version is this graph here. I'll just take out the one there too. Okay, and I'll change the color of the revised version to red. Okay, and let's just align it better. Okay, so that's the revised version of the CRA. Okay, pay careful attention to what you're looking at. Okay, careful attention. I'm going to take the original CRA out, and I'm going to give you the Lyra. What you know, huh? Wouldn't you believe? It's basically a Lyra. That's what it is. The new CRA in red, and the Lyra, the CCA Lyra, it's basically the same IEM. I mean, this here is just me not absolutely being perfect with the way I introduced the tip on the coupler. The other set that I measured the same way. It also, funny enough, had this little notch here. I thought it was a coupler related thing, but no, they both had. I swapped it from left to right. So something internally, I don't know what it is. It's the same. Okay, so that's to quench that doubt. CCA CRA, the latest batch, is not the same as the original batch, which was this. This was the original batch. Okay, all right. So now that that's also out of the way, so we can erase that. We can erase this. We can erase the CRA. Oh, actually, we'll leave the CRA, the new one there. We can erase this one. We can erase this one. All right. So leaves us again with this. Let me now just show you another thing that I wanted to show you, which was this is the ZVX, as I mentioned, but with the wide bore tip. Okay. And as you guys know, I like to tune, I like to play around, so I played around with the CRA, the Lyra, a couple of months ago, and I came up with this tuning. All right, and that's a pretty nice tuning there, I would say. That's a pretty nice tuning. No Zobel Networks, no nothing. That's pretty decent. In my books, I would call that pretty decent. Okay. I also played around with the CXS and retuned it, and I came up with this tuning. And what do you know? It even looks more similar. Look at that. So CCA CXS tuned my way. That doesn't look bad. I actually then made another version where I just lowered the bass slightly, and it's almost identical to the CVX. Almost identical to the ZVX. Anyway, that's not important, so let me just get this just out of curiosity so you guys could see. That is all erased. I'm just going to put all of them back up so that you guys can have one last look. So CCA Lyra, okay, stock. CCA CXS, stock, a little bit more bass, a little bit less here, around 5K, so clean it up. Then the ZVX, here we go, number 4. ZVX, clean that up further again.
the bass has dropped ever so slightly in relation to the CXS, but not in relation to the Lyra. It's imperceptible really. And then Tangzu 1 year, number 5. There we go. Again, the most subdued out of all of these so far. Okay, but in audible terms, that's not what it shows. And then finally, the truth here's Ola. To round up things, apparently the one that has the least bass, or one of the ones with the least bass, but that's not the case. But definitely the one that has the most 3D out of all of them. And that's it, guys. As always, like and subscribe, please. That helps out the algorithm of the YouTube gods, so that people can start seeing my videos more often, and I can get more engagement and more followers. And that's basically what I want, is to have people see my videos, because they take up a lot of my time, and I do it with pleasure. But I want to have them be seen by more people. And any questions that you might have, please feel free to ask. I'll do my very best to answer them as always. All right, you take care now. Bye bye.